So last week I made a appreciation video for Tokyo Ghoul, and within the comment section I seen a lot of people talking about the series known as Parasyte. Funny enough, I love Parasyte. It's actually a series that I read many years before even witnessing Tokyo Ghoul. So I thought now would be a better time than ever to talk about Parasyte a little bit more in detail, a little bit of the comparisons between Tokyo Ghoul and Parasyte, and just the overall series in total. And hopefully people that are looking for series similar to Tokyo Ghoul can find a bit of comfort with Parasyte. Starting off, I think a lot of people over-exaggerate how many comparisons and connections there are between Tokyo Ghoul and Parasyte. There's really not that many. The series are completely different and written to be completely different in every single aspect. I think the only thing that people put on common connection or ground is the main character and their traversal of mentality and how they deal with it personally. But then again, the amount of detail that goes into a series with 300 plus chapters compared to something with only 60 odd chapters is obviously a massive difference. Don't expect the same amount of detail there is in Tokyo Ghoul for Parasyte, but also overall the tone of the story is completely different. As much as Parasyte is very gritty, it's also very clean cut. It knows exactly what it wants to do and it doesn't really fumble around anything. It kind of just gets straight to the point. Tokyo Ghoul, however, likes to use this as more of like an atmospheric building experience where you can lengthen things out for quite a bit of time to build a bit of anticipation for it, a bit of expectation, and really flesh out and go into detail with a character's psychological experience, basically, how they feel, their emotions, this and that. Not to say that Parasyte doesn't do that, it just more so has a detailed plot structure and character structure on how it wants to do it from point A to point B to point C, where Tokyo Ghoul likes to take its time before going through different points. To kind of paint an easier picture, Parasyte would be the tip of the iceberg and Tokyo Ghoul would be the iceberg below the water that you don't see, the massive hunk of ice. Saying this, however, shouldn't take away the quality of the series because Parasyte is extremely well done for what it's trying to do. Also within its time period that it was released, which is around about 1988-89, in a time of muscular men with extraordinary abilities, having a main character that is very timid and in high school and really shy was something a little bit unorthodox. Couple that with the world that it takes place in and the moral conception and the grayness between it, it's very interesting. For those of you that don't really know much about Parasyte, I'm going to give you a brief description for it. We have our main character, Shinichi, who is a young, timid high school student that's going upon his daily life where he encounters a parasite. Now, these parasites come from outer space. They take over human hosts, implant themselves in their brain basically, and kills the human. That's basically it. These parasites can control the human body, they can morph it to any way they want, and then they evolve and adapt and kind of morph into society, and then they tend to feed on humans. With Shinichi's case, the parasite actually burrows into his hand and Shinichi manages to stop it from going to his brain. So the parasite itself actually sprouts within his arm, within his hand, and it gets stuck there, meaning that the two are kind of connected. Shinichi's still alive, he's still conscious, and now the parasite is alive and has taken over his hand, and a connection starts to brew. Obviously, a parasitic being living in your arm is a little bit odd, but these things are extremely intelligent. Just luckily, in Shinichi's case, the parasite doesn't actually have to eat other human beings, considering it's only connected to his hand, and it's kind of relying on Shinichi's food intake and water intake and everything along those lines to actually survive. The parasite is not doing that on its own accord, so that's basically the main concept of Parasyte. Shinichi goes to verse other parasitic beings that definitely develop and evolve very rapidly over time to become very frightening beings. They become very intelligent and very hard to kind of depict from society, meaning that they blend in extremely well. For parasites that come from space, learning to adapt to society and how it actually functions, you know you're dealing with a very dangerous one when they can successfully infiltrate government buildings or even government parties to an extent. For its story, this brings in a completely different element, and some of these characters resemble this heavily. There's a specific character within Parasyte that completely changes your perception on what they truly are. You're meant to believe that these parasites are monsters to begin with, that the only thing that they will ever do and ever know how to do is to kill humans and eat them. However, Shinichi and Migi, which is the parasite within his hand come in contact with another parasite who is very interested in how the world works and how human emotion works and how to evolve and adapt. They're very confused by it. As threatening as this parasite is, they are also very intelligent, and they're completely different to their counterparts that just want to kill and eat when threatened. This parasite knows not to get into a fight when they don't need to, but they're also more interested in, like what I said before, human interaction and emotion, learning to love, learning to hate, learning about the world and everything that kind of couples with it, which is a very interesting topic for an alien being not from this world. You get to see a detailed version of that, and it makes you kind of feel sorry for this parasite because of the things that they go through or what they have to deal with. As a story, Parasyte does a very good job in kind of balancing that thing very well, especially with the amount of time you spend with Migi and Shinichi. You kind of feel sorry for these parasites or specific parasites that are just trying to live in society. Even though their main dietary needs are human, you still feel that shed of like, what if? Can they be better beings? Can they learn to survive without human foods? Can they live in a functioning society? And some of these parasites go to show you that they can. They are very intelligent, and if they were murderous beings with the intelligence that they have, they'd be literally unstoppable. They would cause so much death and destruction compared to the pretty standard counterparts of the parasites to just go around killing people without any thought process whatsoever, without any restraint. They're still deadly, but they're not as scary because they don't really think things through. In that sense, Parasyte depicts its world as a very morally grey area. It constantly drills in the fact that parasites are bad, but there are parasites that can be good, that can even better situations, that can even help and even push forward with human evolution to a certain extent, that can heal people, that can do a lot of different things while sitting comfortably within society. However, should they even be given the opportunity to do so? They bring up these questions quite a bit. And then when you have parasites that have infiltrated government roles and positions, the situation starts to change. How much power should a parasite truly have, and how dangerous is it for them to have this much power, especially over other people in such a high government role? On top of all this, you have a pretty compelling main character. He's not dramatized or over the top to any extent. He's actually rather clean cut, very similar to the story. I think the funniest thing about it is that his character is actually very much so disconnected from the issues that Parasyte's world tend to face. And Shinichi's character and his direction is more so focused, for the first half of the story at least, on a revenge plot, which throws him into a ton of hurdles and into a ton of development that he necessarily didn't want. So this shy and timid high school student starts to become a lot more emotionless, starts to be a lot more aggressive, and it works really well with the appearance of his character. His appearance changes, his demeanor changes, his emotions change, and at the middle point, 3/4 point of the story, he is a completely different person. He's changed so much just from the experience that these parasites have unfortunately given him or put him through. However, the self-awareness kicks in, and I think it's kind of the beauty of his character because it becomes a complete full circle. He gets to a point where it's almost too much, very similar to Kaneki to that extent, where he starts to lose sight of himself and what he's trying to do and what he's trying to achieve. So the rehabilitation starts to set in. He starts to question himself and question his morals and question parasites and really start to become a human being once again. You can kind of equate Shinichi's character growth as going from human to portion or monster and then finding himself to become human once again by the end of the story. It's a very nice progressive thing. It's very fluid, it's not necessarily jarring, and it's actually pretty enjoyable to witness. To see a character come full circle in under 60, 70, 80 odd chapters is a really nice thing. I appreciate that. In the light of all of this, I think the greatest thing about Parasyte is that if you don't want to read the manga, you can actually watch the anime. And for once, the anime for a pretty outdated and somewhat dark manga is actually really well done. The Parasyte anime is phenomenal and will give you an incredible experience. The soundtrack's great, the animation's superb, voice acting is top notch. Everything about the anime is phenomenal. However, if you're not really an anime person, the manga is also incredible. The artwork's a little bit outdated, obviously spanning from the late 80s, but it does have a lot of depth towards it. The artwork is simplistic in nature, but the tone of the story is completely different within the manga compared to the anime, and you can tell by how things are drawn within the manga. Some panels are very obscure and just gritty, and the amount of depth that goes into drawing certain aspects of a character or the parasites, for example, in contrast to the human side is almost night and day, which is very symbolic in that sense. I guess you can draw the comparison similar to Tokyo Ghoul with how Suei Ishida draws his artwork and how gritty and detailed and obscure he generally gets. So it kind of depends on what you want. You definitely can enjoy the entirety of Parasyte with the anime, but if you want more of an original experience with a different tone, then the manga may be more up your alley. But you can experience them both, which is also a great thing. They're equally pretty good. So with that being said, that is basically it. If you have watched Parasyte, or if you've read it, or if you're thinking about checking it out, let me know how you feel about it. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. But I'm actually going to end the video off here. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.